Okay, so let's talk about the bearings on the forward end of the main shaft or the output shaft. So point me to the
hub itself.
Yeah, the hub. Yeah, the clutch gear. Okay, so tell the story, John. So this is one of the clutch gears that's been modified from the T5 original.
Yeah, which originally had two of the tapered bearings, one the stock original, and had another one in opposition, which using a snap ring inside the aluminum housing to hold it in place, ostensibly to maintain end clearance or preload, which it didn't do.
Right.
Hey guys, do you remember shimming those ends and beating it out, throwing the shims in, putting it back together again, checking your end plate, beating it out some more?
Yes, we do.
It got really old, didn't it?
Yep.
Really fast. So tell the story of how we changed this.
So anyway, biggest problem was some of the machine work on that, on the nose here. They left a little extra clearance to make it easy to get the first bearing back in place, which left the other one floating. The change being, got rid of the second bearing. There's a sleeve, which is simply an adapter that enlarges the hub, done mainly for so you, at some point in the future you could get
it back apart.
You could get the original bearing off. Made an adapter sleeve which carries the inner race for the needle bearing.
This
big one. Yeah.
You're supposed to have all your props ready to go.
Yeah, you can tell we're not professionals.
Yeah, which is a rather nice one inch long needle bearing. I think something carrying a load of something like, I don't know, a static load by the book is a couple of 3,000 pounds.
I think it'll
be static side load.
It'll be up to the task.
Yeah.
What's the diameter of those needles, give or take?
About a 1/4 inch on the rollers.
Mm.
Right.
And they're rated at I don't know, I can't remember. I don't remember it. Too many things to remember.
Yeah, but this goes obviously here is what we're showing.
Yeah.
And so now this whole thing, you can set it up without it take 5 years to shim.
Oh, yes.
Pretty much.
And you can get it apart because this, what's the press on this? It's not a lot,
Not
right?
light.
Yeah, just enough to keep it from coming off.
It's a hour or so.
Right.
2 questions, Kent.
Yes.
Where do the shims go, and does that fit into a blind hole on the case?
Yes.
Okay, so there's no retaining clip for that caged needle bearings that you have there.
No.
It just bottoms out in the case.
Right. Yeah, the original tapered roller is shimmed like the stock original version.
Okay.
The original Corvair design was shimmed.
Well, the
Original teeth.
And then the similar to the way the original T5 was.
Yeah, the original race on the thing now has a shoulder to seat against instead of continuing to press on through to the old.
Got something to show there.
Well, here the other one.
The other one's been fixed.
That one's complete.
So that's the next thing to show you is this, because we in some cases new end caps were made because it was too big of a pain to change them, and in others he was able to sleeve them and add that shoulder.
And this a modified version of the original, which now has a steel insert, and it's shimmed behind that bearing like.
Oh,
wow.
So this obviously is the. Can you get that lid out of there? The cap out of there? It'll come.
Maybe.
Except when doctor. Okay, so if you've looked at your Corvair T5, right? This is the one end of the transmission has a cap. Cap comes off, and then you have access to all that stuff.
And The needle bearing is basically just a light press into the original.
Into that aluminum housing.
Yes.
Yeah. Now with the steel sleeve, if you have the fixed version, or if you have the one that has square corners, it's been built from the start to be right.
And then how do you set the preload on the tapered roller bearing?
It's the shim behind the original the tapered roller, bearing on the clutch gear.
Here behind this.
Yep.
Okay.
Basically, it's set it together and see what it is, and measure the end play and shim appropriately.
Somewhat less involved than originally, because we've just got the one you have to deal with, I guess.
We need to know where we're going to get those shims.
They're readily available stock shims. Any transmission shop.
Okay.
We've been getting them from the guy that does T5 rebuilds here.
Right. But I think everybody needs to know, so they're not like, do I have to make them or?
Yeah.
No. They're a standard steel shim.
For that transmission, John?
No, for a 2 9/16 behind to shim a bearing that size, that are 2 9/16 OD
Okay.
on the race.
I see. Most transmission shops have a whole selection of shims. I see. Okay, cool.
Hey, one more question. Did you
Please.
do a machining operation on the aluminum cap in order to fit the inner steel sleeve in there?
All done. I would recommend you guys, you want to do this, it's send the nose housing and the main shaft up, and I'll do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd probably be the simplest. But otherwise, we can give you specific directions if you need to have it done where you are.
Nope.
You mean you don't want Joe Bob to do it?
I like making shavings.
Yeah, he's really good at it. He gets a Christmas card from the metal recycler every year. Okay, so that's this part then.
Yeah.
Were there any failures associated with the way this was set up, John, or was it just a giant pain in the ass?
Just time and effort.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if one of those bearings didn't work the way it was supposed to originally. It was just not
Never
working.
had a problem. The other thing is the change on the inside.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. That's great. Okay. He's getting another prop, ladies and gentlemen.
The inside was where the action was.
Indeed. Okay.
If you've had it apart, you've probably seen those.
Right. Those were inside the clutch gear, right? Is that right? They were
Yes.
down in here?
Correct.
And tell the story about that, how wonderful those were. Not.
Well,
So they were down in here.
my original one made it to Daytona and back.
Just barely.
Barely. And those little bearings were a real funny shade of blue.
They had been a little warm, had
They
they?
had been a little warm at some time,
Yeah.
but oddly enough, they used somebody, whoever put those together. There are three different bearings that they used in there.
Just
all
whatever
the same,
they could get.
all the same OD and ID, but the balls were different sized and different quantities.
And so,
None of which were heavy duty enough.
right.
And those were ball bearings, not
These
needle.
are ball, and you can see they're open. So
Yeah.
if you're going to have an open ball bearing, you probably want lots of lubrication kind of splashing around. Anybody want to guess about how much lubrication managed to find its way into this pocket?
Well, there's a hole in there.
There is a hole, one.
And that would let all the lubricant out.
Yeah, let all the lubricant out, right. So instead, what we have in there now is it this guy?
Yes.
This.
Yeah, you want to do the unboxing, sir? And this was some of the surprise, because we thought we were close to being ready to get these guys back together a few months ago.
So instead of this,
Right.
these, we now have
We now have this with an inner
There's a
race.
Inner race. A tapered
There you go.
straight roller with a race.
Yeah.
Brand name.
Yeah, it's not Joe Bob's bearings. And so the problem was, as John discovered, is the inside here was not, shall we say, machined to a consistent tolerance.
They needed to be loosened up a little bit.
Because the ball bearings didn't care.
Well, they were pressed in.
They were pressed in, but they didn't. If it was a little tight here, it didn't make the bearings. What's the word I want?
Drag.
Seize. They didn't. But these straight rollers, any kind of weirdness here, and they just wouldn't roll. So we had the same people that did the gun drilling, even though the shafts are made in Portland. One operation was subbed out to a place up here in Tacoma, which place called Tech Marine. They did the gun drilling, and they were able to get in here with a blind honing tool and get this to a consistent dimension. And also, in some cases, they had to deepen the pocket. It wasn't deep enough for this bearing because this bearing is
20
thicker.
20 millimeter.
Yeah.
Wasn't there some concentricity problems also?
For some of the clutch gears, yeah, this hole wasn't concentric with the center of the smaller hole.
The concentricity was on the outside, on the front end.
Over here. Okay.
Yeah, from where the welding was done, they machined it down and for clearance, make it easy to put the bearing on. Except it didn't hold the second one.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Dope.
So there was quite a bit of work on that part. Oh, and then that's not all, folks. We got this all done, and what did we find else was wrong? You remember?
Heat treat shrinkage.
They were soft. So where was the welding done originally that made it soft? Will that come off? Maybe.
It better come off.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
So
This.
with that
Right in
sleeve,
there.
with that sleeve off now, it's a much shorter looking part, right? The sleeve sits here, but the welding was here, right?
In just no, in the little gap.
In the gap.
Yeah.
Was that to build it up? Oh, that's right. They weren't. That's right.
They had this whole end section is a piece of 8620.
I forgot.
They drilled and splined.
Right. The splines are on the inside. Yep.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that. So
Welded to this.
the original part is shorter, isn't it, on the original T5? So yeah, there was a
Yeah.
bunch of welding done here, and it made this whole area soft. And that's not good if you're going to have bearing surfaces and things like that. So we also had to get them reheat treated. And then after they were heat treated, they shrank.
Right.
And so we had to open some things up in a couple of places. It was just nonstop fun with this part.
But the other part there, Ken, is the drive end is to your left, and the intersection between that drive end and that gear, which is that spot that was welded, if it was soft, over time it could fail.
Right. I don't know if Rick or Tim, did you have any cracking at that point on your units? Assume not. They'll hop in if they did. Cool. All right.
Yeah. But to get this concentric means that the idea of each of those splines, those adapters, is basically different.
Right. Yeah. It's not Ford Motor Company assembly line on these sleeves. Had to make it per unit.
Grind them concentric and make an adapter sleeve to match.
Right. Okay.
Hey, Kent, I had to step out for a minute. You had a question for?
Yeah. Did you have any cracking or failure? Because this material was added to the stock T5 part with this weld. Did you have any trouble with yours there?
I don't recall, so I'm going to go with no.
Cool. Well, one thing we're going to want to do with yours and Tim's, probably have you send that clutch gear as part of what you send up, and we can test it to make sure it's not soft, because almost all the ones we have checked over the years, this whole area is soft because of the weld that was done.
Yeah. You have spares?
No.
Instead of screwing around with mine, which might be non-concentric and soft and everything else?
Right. Right, and then Tim said something in text, I think. Let me see what he just said. Oh, shoot, why won't it show me his text? That's not helpful. Oh, there it is. His did not fail. Tim's didn't fail. He can see. Okay, great. He can see the video, but he doesn't have audio at the moment. All right. So,
But the other part of that is you have to kind of send your gear in, because each one's has different gear ratio, and that's part of the gear ratio on that input shaft.
Yes, that's right. It's not easily changed. Oh, there is one more thing. Some of these didn't have a retaining ring, did they?
Yeah, most of them.
Most of them didn't. So, and that's important because...
Input shaft will slide all the way through.
Right.
Yes, it will.
And so there is a snap ring groove that's been cut in here and a snap ring's been put in. Some of them, I think in the second series of production, some of them already had that groove put in, but all the ones with serial number 10 or less, no groove that we've seen. Oh, Tim's just saying in text here, maybe you guys can see that, but his input shaft bored its way through the front cover. That was fun,
that's
Tim
the
says. That's the
Makes
one.
an oil leak.
Yeah, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so I guess that's everything we did to that part, which was a lot.
And I still don't see what keeps that going from going back and forth. Once you put that collar on the outside of
On the
that,
outside, yep.
and I realize there's kind of a press fit for the bearing that goes on the outside of that into the aluminum housing. So
Yep.
you don't really need to do that. But if you could drop that down in there into the aluminum housing,
Yes.
I just don't see how you get any kind of preload on that tapered roller bearing there. Oh, where did it go?
Yeah, it's sitting off to the side. Here it is.
Preload is adjusted by a shim under this bearing's race.
Right.
And
I got that part. I understand how you get the preload. Where does the force come, like in your right hand, Kent, to
Yep.
push that in, to hold it into that blind hole?
there's needle roller. The main shaft is held in place by the tail shaft housing, has a ring that holds the rear main shaft bearing in the case. Holds the race in it locates, or should I say just locates the rear bearing. Carries it through. There's a needle bearing, a needle thrust bearing that runs inside
Right.
of the synchro hub.
And that rolls on the input shaft as well?
No, it just transfers it from the main shaft, the rear part of the gear carry part of the main shaft, through the clutch gear to the tapered roller, which has a shim on it under its bearing race.
Do you want to, where is that on here? Kind of just, you could hold it up, kind of where that's all happening.
Well, I don't know, where are we here? The rear bearing sits out here. And there's the tail shaft holds that race, which carries it so it locates it, and then you shim the thing at the other end.
Okay.
You push against it.
And to locate it against the rear bearing, which is
That was the nature of my question. What holds the preload on that bearing from the opposite end?
Yeah. Okay.
What force gets exerted? And that just answered my question.
Cool. Great.